Five-star final, JCM Jones from the mothership and Dirty South Soccer sometimes. Joe Patch from 929 The Game and Dirty South Soccer is over there. And Joe, once again, still counts. Still counts.
Oh yeah. Oh, it counts. It counts. I mean, Atlanta. I didn't realize until I read in Kyle Soto's post game article from yesterday that the result from that Atlanta had yesterday moved them to third in the Eastern Conference at the time. They're fifth now, but I mean, yeah, it still counts. I'm just generally still recovering from the day that was yesterday, the sports day. It was just insane from start to finish. My day went Monaco Grand Prix, Tottenham, final game of the season, Braves. Phil Mickelson was somehow winning a major during all this, Atlanta United, and then the Hawks, of course, with the nightcap was a beautiful way to finish the night. What a great sports day it was yesterday. But I wrote down the show sheet. This was a win. This was a win that Atlanta United had. This one win yesterday.
No other team had taken a point from Seattle at home this year. No other team had scored against Seattle at home this year. And so that being considered, you kind of have to take it that way. Josef Martinez converts the penalty at the end there. It gets real quiet in there, just like it got real quiet in MSG last night. And it's something. It's something. I don't know what it is, but it's something.
We talked about, or at least I kind of mentioned, when Atlanta United drew with Miami, and the roles were kind of flipped in that game, where Atlanta scored the early goal, and then Miami came back and scored the late one that felt like a loss. This one felt much more like you're walking away with the point. Of course, a lot of that is due to the opponent and just the fixture as well, where it's a tough opponent to play and obviously a tough place to play. But kind of funny how just like the timing of the way that things happen in the game can kind of flip how you think about it. Of course, we'll have a lot to dive into on the game and stuff, but just thought it was an interesting kind of way that game shaped up.
It was. And we're going to get to all of it in just a second. First, though, some housekeeping things. You can go ahead and check out some extra audio on the Patreon. We talked to Sam Stagecall of Allocation Disorder and The Athletic. He helped us break down the salary release the MLSPA had last week. And we got a better understanding of that. I thought the most interesting thing from that was he kind of talked about how Atlanta seemed to be spending more in the middle than other teams,
yeah.
Which really kind of caught my eye. And I'm not sure. He said that wasn't necessarily a bad way to build a team. It maybe just a little different within the framework right now. And you can take your own conclusions as to what that means for the team going forward. Also, some other stuff coming about Atlanta's front office moves. We're going to get Felipe on. We promise we're going to get Felipe on. We've been saying we're going to get Felipe on since I think the article dropped, but we have a plan.
Last week got stuck in the mud, but yeah.
For sure. We'll have him on soon, and we'll have so much more coming your way. That's patreon.com/5stripe final. Now that's over. It's business time. Business time. Joe Patrick, and first things first, Atlanta United gets the road win 1-1 against Seattle, as you would put it. Anyway, Raul Ruidiaz starts things off in the 6th minute with a headed goal from a corner. Brooks Lennon maybe should have marked better, but Brooks Lennon makes up for it somewhere around the 86th minute when Brad Smith just does a spectacular nonsense and fouls him in the box for like literally no reason. Atlanta hadn't really threatened all game. Brooks Lennon wins the penalty anyway. Josef Martinez, of course, converts 1-1. Joe, I am maybe just more confused. My biggest takeaway from this might just be that I'm kind of confused why Seattle decided to not do anything for 80 minutes. That's kind of my takeaway, that they scored. It looked like this could have been really, really bad. And then they set back. They tried to absorb pressure, which is fine. That's a very Seattle thing. But they never tried to hit on the break after that. It seemed like they were fine, just kind of not parking the bus, but just sitting there, really. It was strange to me to see them think, okay, well, it's a fair risk to assume that Atlanta isn't going to score, but also we're not going to try to score, which probably helped us out a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to get into kind of the nitty gritty of this game, and there's definitely fair critique to have of this team in the attack, but I mean, I would put a lot of that down to Atlanta United. They do deserve credit for the way that they defend on the counter, especially when teams try to play that game. They've got, Anton Walks and Miles Robinson back there who are two of the best in the league at kind of handling some of those types of situations. And combined with Santiago Sosa as well, he does a great job defensively. I I really like the way that he seems to be able to communicate with his teammates back there, and they seem to have a good sense of who needs to pressure the ball and who needs to be covering in certain situations. And just generally, I mean, the team was dominated the ball in terms of possession, and I think you have to give them credit. We talk about how this team is good in build up, but they're struggling in the final third. Well, part of the reason, or one of the effects that you get from having such a good build up and being so good in possession, is that you are able to limit teams and what they can do to you offensively. And you can kind of predict that they're going to have to try to play a counterattacking style of game, and Atlanta United was able to defend it. So, I think that while there is criticism for this team, there's obviously some huge reasons to be positive about them as well.
Anton very good, Miles very good. So of course did the things, cutting off balls in transition a couple times, just getting in front of passes, disrupting things. And yeah, no, I think Seattle had 2 shots on target. The first one was Ruidiaz's goal, and the second one came much later. So that's impressive. That's impressive against the best team in the league, and you can't discredit them, for that. Again, I think it's weird that Seattle did take their foot off the gas so much, but even when they tried to get it going again, Atlanta didn't necessarily allow it.
I mean, Seattle's the highest scoring team in MLS right now, and still after a 1-1 result yesterday, and it's not even close. I think the next closest team is NYCFC with 11 goals, and or no, it's Kansas City with 12. Seattle has 14 goals. So yeah, I mean, it's a good defensive performance, and it's a good road point to get. So it's a difficult. That's probably going to be the toughest fixture on their on the fixture list this year, and to get a point out of that, you got to be happy.
Absolutely. We could we're not going to get into it right now because it's all the same stuff over and again. It's, again, analytical purgatory for us going forward and attack. Y'all know what the issues are. We've talked about it a million times at this point. They didn't really create anything. Thank God for Brad Smith. But they do get the point that moves them up to, like Joe said at the beginning of the show, they're about 5th in the East. And then the 4 teams above them have played 4 or 5 home games. Atlanta's only played 2, plus you consider they've had CCL. That's a really solid place to be in. I kind of did some math. I think, I can't remember what article it was now. All the articles for the mothership are running together, but I kind of did some math, and through the first 5 games, Atlanta had 8 points, and that was good to put them right about the same pace as the 2017 team and like 3 points behind the 2019 team. Right. So that's not a bad place to be in. They had another point, and of course, more home games coming, more time to gel, and their hindsight coming. It's a decent spot to be in, right? You just want that little burst of attacking to come in to make it feel a little more earned.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the kind of game where you're like, "Hey, mom, hey, dad, come watch this. Come watch this soccer game."
Yeah.
It's not one to bring home to your parents. But again, soccer is it's a sport that sometimes you have to endure the more boring aspect of it. But obviously, Atlanta United's attack, they need it to improve. Josef Martinez said it after the game, saying that they know they need to create more chances. And again, it's kind of similar. You bring up 2019. It's kind of funny how similar it is to that period where they went through this whole month of May where they had clean sheet after clean sheet, and it was really boring in the attack, but people were like, well, they're getting results, they're staying, and they're keeping themselves alive because of the results they're getting. But that's why I think both you and I are both kind of like, okay, but can we get this engine to turn over and finally start to see the goals come in?
That's exactly right. But something, again, we want to kind of keep considering this is just the feel around the team is so much more positive.
Oh yeah.
And that may just be because of expectations. We did have such high expectations for what the FDB teams could be, and then they weren't. And, obviously he didn't help himself by calling Atlanta fans spoiled and everything like that. This team comes in with lower expectations for sure, and so maybe more understanding is there from the fans, but overall it does seem like there is just a more cohesive attitude. There is a more positive outlook on things from this team, and it seems like to an extent they like each other at least, and they aren't at the coach's throat or anything like that. It just feels better in that sense, and it's encouraging to see them come back and get these late points. Again, we kind of talked about it last week with how you kind of build that culture of being a team that can come back in any situation and make that happen, whether it's a little bit of a luck kind of thing or not, but they're still getting it done. They're building that culture, and that at the very least is encouraging.
Yeah. And again, I would even go back to it's very hard to describe this as like via a podcast, especially, but just in the way they play the game when they are in that possession phase, when they're not really threatening, but they are playing the ball well. I do think that having that base, having that building block does allow them to be able to push the boundaries a little bit more at the ends of games or when they are chasing a goal. They at least have some ability to move the team forward and get the whole team kind of playing in the other team's half and give themselves at least chances to, for example, in the game yesterday, hit a diagonal that goes to the corner of the box and you pick up a penalty, that kind of thing. They have the ability to pull that kind of out of their ass right now. It's probably not the most sustainable way to play the game, but at least you have that kind of foundation to build off of. And I think, again, that's what we're all just kind of waiting to see what they can turn that into.
I don't know what you're talking about, man. It seems sustainable to me to just fall ass backwards in the supporter shield.
Yeah,
would work for me, man. Would work for me. Gabriel Heinze had some quotes about what this team's trying to do right now, and we'll go to this first one. He says, "What I'm trying to do with my players is try and teach them a certain way. There will be some games where we have more chances. There will be games when we don't have as many chances. And the day that I don't have the trust in the players I'm coaching, I will move away." So that's encouraging, at the very least, right? To hear that, he understands that this is a process. I think everyone understands that this is a process right now, and that's good. And that's good that he understands that having that trust is important. It's something that maybe Frank didn't.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you like to hear that from Heinze. He's not getting overwhelmed with the way that his team is playing in the attack, of course, because I'm sure that Heinze wants to see, he wants to see more goals too. It's not like he's accepting of this, but he's clearly trying to, build some trust and some confidence in his players. And that's always a good thing.
For sure. It's just coming maybe a little slower than we'd like. And it's coming a little slower maybe in comparison to some other teams that, we would look around the league and see. But again, it kind of comes back to as well, the roster just isn't quite where it needs to be right now. So there you go. He also kind of mentioned that he appreciated how the team kind of built from back to front. And this one, again, I think that's fair. I think that's been fair for pretty much the entire year. You would love to see a few more line-breaking passes. Again, Atlanta second to last in the league in that. I don't think this game really helped him too much with that. But every now and then you see something come from back to front that turns out pretty nicely. For example, Miles Robinson's ball over the top to Brooks Lennon was incredibly well-weighted, incredibly well-positioned, kind of stopped on a dime for Brooks to get there and cause Brad Smith to lose his damn mind. Looked good.
I want to give just a shout out to Miles. He was carrying the ball forward a lot farther forward than he has so far this season. Earlier in the game, and then later in the game, he was hitting some nice diagonal passes. So I think just the continued evolution of him, and he's just looks so, he's such a he's obviously tall and strong, like this big physically imposing guy, but he's also he looks so smooth when he's on the ball. He looks like he can kind of do that thing where he just kind of leans into the opposing player and is able to keep the ball on the other side of him and just kind of keep the ball safe until he can move it and distribute it to somebody nearby. So really encouraging to see how he's been able to evolve his game this year under Heinze, because he needs to be able to do that kind of thing in this kind of system. And so he and Anton Walkes are both doing an incredible job back there.
Absolutely. So 1-1 draw there. Some other news to kind of get to, though, before we get into your questions. Lisandro Lopez has left the team. He will not be coming back. He has ended his time with Atlanta United, returns home after his father passes away. We send our best to Lisandro, but from a soccer perspective, it's also a big loss. You lose a lot of the depth you had kind of built up at striker.
Yeah, this is some of the guys that we talked to this week were expressing just the sadness of the situation and also the sadness of, losing a guy like him from the roster, a guy like that can provide so much experience and ability, and he still has quality in his feet, even though he's at an older age. And by the way, I don't be surprised to see him. I think he will probably sign with another team down there, but the thing for him is he just needs to be in closer proximity. So it's not necessarily a thing that he can't play soccer, but he just wants to be close to home. And I think that, everybody here can appreciate that.
As far as bringing someone else in, I wouldn't get your hopes too high up for someone spectacular or anything like that. He was on pretty low numbers, pretty
That's
low
the problem.
on the roster spot. It's nothing that's going to allow for a big name to come in. Elsewhere, it looks like Stephen Glass is the Aberdeen manager, Stephen Glass, is looking to bring Jack Gurr over there to Aberdeen. Of course, the Lady United has a partnership. We saw Gurr for a little bit at right back when Brooks Lennon got hurt against Chicago. He looked pretty solid. Interesting, though, that they kind of make that choice now, especially when we haven't seen anyone else as backup right back. Also, happy late birthday to Stephen Glass. Someone on Twitter who, not related to Atlanta United, posted a picture of him and was like, hey, y'all remember Stephen Glass? It's his birthday. Here he is on a bike for some reason that he won during a soccer game. It was fun.
People are so into birthdays online, man. I don't remember anybody's birthday. So apologies. It would be hilarious. I want this move to happen if for no other reason, so that both teams are loaning each other's right backs to one another.
Perfect. And then we can make our own like 15-minute long conspiracy videos about how Jack Gurr was always going to Aberdeen.
Illuminati
stuff. Exactly. All right.
By the way, I'll mention really quickly that Gurr did start for the Twos last night, or yesterday. So, I mean, I don't know if that's a sign or anything that something may or may not be imminent, but worth noting there.
Perfect. It's worth noting that you guys had a bunch of questions after this one. We'll get to it right after this quick break. Wow, what a break. Amazing break. Best break ever. Y'all had questions about this. We're going to get through them as quick as we can. Jake asked, and we'll start with this one. Jake asked, how do we fix our set piece woes? Also, does it feel like, in my opinion, the team is putting together the little pieces to be a good team each week? Maybe. The set piece woes, I don't really know, besides just not leaving a dude wide open like Raul Ruidiaz. I know he's like 5'7", but he's also the best striker in the league. Y'all gotta cover him. Other than that, team is short. It
is short. By the way, Ruidiaz, that was a nice header. It was a nice meaty header to get that much power to the back post, or back across goal, I should say. Set pieces are tough. It's one of those things. I think that you can kind of refine that in a pretty short period of time. Tata Martino's team had issues at times, and they really did focus on it then, when I think before the playoffs, and it did seem to pay off for them. Maybe you could use some tactical tweaks. They were clearly, I mean, you could see it. They're in pure man marking, which is kind of an old school way to defend set pieces. Zonal marking, which has kind of become famous for Michael Cox from The Athletic has kind of adopted that, but that's the popular way now to defend set pieces. And you can see why, is because so that you can get more of a leap on it when you're not trying to chase an individual. And you could see once Brooks Lennon got beat there was no way he was going to recover. It's like once he got beat on his feet, there was no way he was going to be able to jump up and be able to contest that. So, maybe there's some tweaks, but it's just not something that I'm honestly all that concerned with at this point.
Nah, not yet. Maybe as we get closer to the playoffs, and that starts to become a bigger issue, but not yet. As far as little pieces, I feel like we kind of talk about that every week. The building blocks are getting there. They're maybe just being built a little more slowly than someone like me has the patience for, but you should have the patience for it. It's gonna get there eventually, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think honestly, one of the more frustrating pieces of yesterday was, it's like the relationship that Bello has with Marcelino Moreno on that left side just still does not seem to be. They do not seem to be in sync with one another, and we're like 10 games in.
Marcelino Moreno runs like a 10-year veteran catcher who has been applauded for his entire career, like solely for his defense, but can't swing a bat. It's amazing how slow he looks sometimes. It's shocking to see him out in the wing, and they are so disjointed right now with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and
the team only moves down one side. The team it only goes down the right side at this point, as far as moving the ball into the final third, and it's not great. That needs to be fixed.
And the times when it does move up the left side is large. It's usually Bello who's getting in behind, who's creating the width out there, which is his job. But there was one time noticeably in the second half where it was like George Bello playing a 1-2 with Josef Martinez, and they were able to play Bello in behind, but then it's like you have Bello running in behind trying to shoot on goal, which is not, I'm not complaining about that, but it's probably not the ideal situation. You probably want a more attacking player to kind of be in those combinations. So yeah,
I think one of our listeners, Alexandria Seaborn, I think is her name, was pointed out, like, what's the point of having this kind of width to the fullbacks if they're just not going to do anything? And it's a good point right now. They are just kind of there, and the width doesn't mean anything. They're just kind of there, and it's not turning into anything useful. We'll see if they sort it out. Allison asked, how do you make the personnel changes needed to make this result sustainable going forward? Also, is Conway dead? If not, why are we still playing Cuba? On the last one, we don't know. We would like to see Jackson. We're on record as that. As far as any personnel changes, I don't know. I think the lineup was correct yesterday as far as what we had. I think you said before the game that you thought it was as well. I like Mulroney coming off the bench and kind of enjoy that role for him. And again, he looked solid coming off the bench and added a different element. For now, the team kind of is what it is.
Yeah, I think that that's the one thing that people would maybe nitpick at is that you could start Mulroney because the team did look better after he came on. But honestly, I think that one of the reasons he looks so good when he comes on is because he does kind of change things for the opponent and he's able to better express himself. I just feel like in those substitution roles. So I've got no problem with Eric Lopez continuing to start when you have this personnel available. But in terms of, personnel changes, I really do think that this team will look much, much better when Ezequiel Barco's on the field. Like that he will give you a lot of the creation and dynamism that you need in the middle of the pitch where we've heard a lot of complaints and clearly it was lacking. Josef Martinez was basically playing as a number 10 and a number 9 yesterday, trying to drop in and play 1-2s like I mentioned with Bello. So I do think that Barco will come into this side and make a big difference. But again, what we've talked about on this show has always been the same, which is that you just don't know how long Barco is going to be able to stay on the field before he misses more time with an injury. He's only played in 3 MLS games so far this year, only started 2 of them. So when you think actually that Atlanta United's in 5th place, considering that, it's not that bad. But again, you just need him on the field if you want to play the kind of style that you want.
I will say it's probably important to keep in mind too that so many other teams have way more injuries than Atlanta United right now. And that some of them are struggling. Columbus for one, Toronto as well. But then you think about like even Seattle, who's missing Ladera and Morris. I don't know. You just can't lean on the injury thing too much. It'll look different, but like other teams are handling it. That's always going to be my take. And we have this question here from Rick Atkinson, which I think is poignant. He says, why is it such a mystery as to an ETA on the return of Barco and Deb? And I think you can probably offer more on the kind of the evolution of how we were told about injuries cutting from the beginning of Atlanta United to now. I messed around and went to grad school for a little bit and kind of got off the beat, but you would have a better understanding of it.
Honestly, one of the reasons why it's such a mystery is because the league does not set rules around what kind of information teams must release. So in other sports leagues, there is more of that. And you've seen like Bill Belichick play games in the NFL where he's like puts Tom Brady on, an injury list every week or whatever. But because honestly, and it comes back to gambling, it's like setting lines. So that odds makers can more accurately set lines on games with players having injury news, and there's just no such rule that's in place right now for MLS. It's one of the things where if MLS does want to lean into the kind of gambling side, which Don Garber has expressed in the past, then you would think that they would want to amend these kinds of rules, but but you can also see why there would be pushback on that because there's a competitive advantage to not doing so. So it looks pretty clearly both of them have like a hamstring pull, and we pretty much know that takes anywhere in the range of like 2 weeks to 6 weeks, depending on how bad it is typically. So I think that's what we can probably expect from those guys.
So we'll see. Sometimes those things just kind of pile up on each other and you have another injury that comes from that injury and then you kind of get going. You don't even know where the timeline actually starts for that. So don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. Ryan Lee, don't hold your breath on this, Ryan. What is it going to take for us to attack up the middle? The answer might be better soccer players, but I don't know, man. It's kind of rough. Yeah, we talked a bit to Joseph about this, about him coming back and dropping deeper than maybe we're accustomed to seeing him doing. But he's done that before. But maybe it comes from a bit more of a place of frustration that he's not getting on the ball when he is pushing the line, if that makes sense. So I don't know. Those are the only things that are turning into attacking chances up the middle. They're struggling to get the ball at the top of the box or that zone 14 area where a lot of goals come from. Analysts will tell you that zone 14 area is where you want to get the ball in it and you have a better chance of creating from that point. It's just not happening the way you see the best teams in the league do it right now. And it's a struggle.
Yeah, and so I think one of the pieces we've already talked about Barco and these guys who will help the team in the attack, but I think that when we have to admit that when the team doesn't have Barco, there should be somebody else who can come in, and that goes to your point, Sam, of other teams having injuries and being able to deal with them maybe a little bit better. Not that Atlanta United's playing poorly overall, because we've already talked about that, but just in the attack, there aren't really the pieces and the playmakers that are able to make up for the loss of an Ezequiel Barco. And I think that comes down to just kind of the depth of the roster in that area. The wingers, the attacking midfielders are not, this team doesn't really have a lot of depth there. So yeah, that's just an issue that they're having to deal with. And I do think that they can rectify some of that this summer by making some moves. They're going to have to move some pieces out to be able to give themselves the flexibility to bring in the pieces that might fit a little bit better. So that's why I think it will be a very interesting summer because it's not going to be just like you add an Eric Remedi in the summer and plug a hole. So it will be interesting. But I think that, yeah, that I think that's one of the reasons. And honestly, Heinze, it doesn't seem like his style of play is huge on like play up the middle in general. Like it's a lot of like building up through the wings. So we'll see.
You do kind of have to work out to end though. At that point, it's not happening with square balls across the box or anything like that. It's just not there right now. Hopefully they'll figure that out. Maybe it'll help them figure out if they can figure out some personnel things here. Jonathan asked, how in the heck is Eric Lopez getting the nod over Mulroney? And how often do you still think about that first half against Philly? I dream each night about it. Jonathan coming after your boy Elo here. Joe, I think we kind of already mentioned that we do like Mulroney coming off the bench as far as right now. I think that is the best option. Lopez has been pretty anonymous for the most part. I think we were kind of hoping that he may provide something different, and that necessarily hasn't been the case. And again, I think if we're talking about the half in Philadelphia, this team is missing someone like Jurgen Damm right now and missing Ezequiel Barca, who are both available in that. And I think that's all it really kind of comes down to.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right with Barco and Dam there. And I would also Eric Lopez had a tough matchup yesterday against one of the best defenders in MLS. He kind of like matched up with Nuhu for a lot of that game. Obviously, picking up an early yellow card like he did, and I think it was like the second minute, is not the best way to start a game because it kind of limits what you can do. And I think that Heinze, probably part of the reason of putting Mulroney in there at halftime was just because you don't want to, it's a risk to carry a player who's on a yellow card like that. So, and he was still showing aggressiveness after being booked. So, I was calling for Eric Lopez a lot early in the season. I still, again, as I said earlier, I would still continue to start him and have Mulroney coming in off the bench. But the reason I wanted to see Eric Lopez was because I just wanted to see what Eric Lopez could offer. He was a player that Atlanta United spent $1 million plus transfer on last year, and I think that you stand every reason to expect something, expect talent. So I've just wanted to see him, and I don't think he's played poorly. He's just a young guy who's still trying to figure out, how to play in this league. He's like 19 or 20 years old. So we still need to have a long leash with Eric Lopez. He's not like, he shouldn't be getting berated too harshly, but it's just one of those things where he's in a tough situation where he's now being relied upon to start games.
For sure. And again, back to the Philadelphia thing. Like I said, I do think that Dom probably offers a little more, just because he's fast, he's going to be Jurgen Damm. And I'm not saying that he's going to come back in as he's going to come back in and everything's going to look like that first half in Philadelphia, but it will make things just a little bit better whenever that is. Again, don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. We had a few different questions, I think, about bringing in new talent. Joe, you have all these highlighted here. Why is that?
Well, I kind of grouped them together because it seemed like they were kind of all hitting on a similar theme of like what can happen. So Pierce asked, would it be advantageous for us to look for a decent attacker in a trade within MLS? Example, LAFC for Corey Baird, an effective spot starter and backup.
LAFC's not going to do that. Let's just get out of the way. Thanks. Bye.
Right. Yeah. You would probably have a better idea, like if there's anybody that would around the league that might be a good fit for Atlanta. But again, it's going to be very tough because of, Lisandro Lopez obviously clears a roster spot for this team, but he doesn't clear really any allocation money, I believe. And so you're still pretty much up to your neck there. So his departure throws things out of balance just a little bit because you have this international roster spot open, which is now valuable. but you don't really have the money to bring in anybody who can fill it the way you would want an international slot to be filled.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough.
Some people have brought up like someone like Danny Royer, who Red Bulls has been shopping, which I think makes sense maybe from a personnel, like a profile. But like again, you got to give up stuff to do that. I don't know what Atlanta United has to give up and could give up that Red Bulls would want to be interested in too, that they could afford. So it all comes down to a lot. I wouldn't. I don't know. There's a lot of questions here.
I think an intra-league trade is actually a more difficult move to make at this point than acquiring somebody from the outside. Smurfy asks, is there any merit to the idea of poaching proven MLSers from other teams? Yeah, we just talked about that. Instead of hitting the South American pipeline again to find dudes, I'd take one dude in hand at this point over whatever dudes might be in the bush. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, no, again, tough to do. Moving on. What did Chris say?
Chris said, should Atlanta still be trying to use the model of developing young guys to sell to Europe? It seems to add a lot of turnover to a really high turnover league, and we've seen what happens when we miss on DP signings. Would we be better off following in Seattle's footsteps and sign very good DPs, but sign them to be in Atlanta for a long time? I'm assuming that means like an older-ish DP. This has obviously worked for Seattle with 4 Western Conference titles and 2 MLS Cups in 5 years, but also Toronto and Columbus have both had a lot of success doing this. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think you stick kind of with the brand, right? Like I still think the model is good, even if they have missed on Barco and PT. I do think that is kind of the way to go about it. And like you can look at an LAFC who's kind of mixed it a little bit. You have the 2 young guys with Rocky, or Jesus Christ, Rossi and Rodriguez, who are not the same person. You should not combine both their names. But then they kind of mix in Vela with that, as well as their 3 DPs. So obviously Rodriguez gone for now, apparently getting into fights with teammates over in Spain, which rules. And Rossi is obviously incredibly good. So I mean, I guess there is something to be said about maybe having your one kind of older guy, but right now that's Josef, and it is going to be Josef. So if you're looking to fill those 2 other spots, I'm okay with going with those younger guys and seeing if that works out. It should work out. Every team's not going to necessarily be Columbus and be able to pull in an older guy at that point and have a couple older guys and still be sustainable that way. It may burn out for Columbus kind of quick as soon as, I don't know, someone like Zardes or Zellerion kind of trails off when they're older, but that's in the future. For now, I think Atlanta's model is fine.
Yeah, I've got no problem with this model. I like the maneuverability. I like kind of having the feeling like you can move pieces when you need to, instead of being locked into a DP. And, part of it is that Seattle's DP signings have generally just worked out. They've signed good DPs, but that's not necessarily because of their age. It's because they were good players and were able to perform in this league. But you could also sign an older DP who comes in and is not very productive, and then you're kind of saddled with them and you can't move them. And then you kind of get yourself into a jam. So I like the fact that I like signing in players. And I think that it also fits with the way that they're signing managers who are on shorter term contracts, so that they can kind of, have these phases. And soccer is just a league that is high, or it's a high turnover sport. If you look at any team, like even in Europe, your favorite team will probably have had, if you look back 2 years prior, will have had a ton of turnover in the squad. So that's just kind of the way the sport works. Players have short careers and they want to move and be ambitious. So I've got no problem with Atlanta continuing to pursue how they're going.
Yeah, you just have to hit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the only thing that really matters. So necessarily what kind of profile you're bringing in, you just have to hit.
You get Almiron for 2 years, you got one of the best players in the league. It doesn't matter if he's older or young or whatever.
Exactly. And then if he is younger and it works out, you do get that payout at the end. It's kind of nice, kind of a little bonus at the end there. Just do it. Just hit, guys, please. Someone listening, please help us. Joe, I think you're going to need some help too. This is rapid fire. Palm Tree asked from the Discord, he asked over under how many seasons before we have a fun Seattle Atlanta United match. I'm going to put the over under at 4.5. Go.
Yeah, maybe. I'll put it on the over. I'm not convinced that this game will ever be fun ever.
No, the two styles are just never going to be interesting. I don't think, as long as Smetcher is there, as long as the team plays the way they do, and as long as Atlanta's Atlanta. Philip Jeffcoat asks, who will be the next person not named Josef Martinez to score a goal for United? Oh God, these are good. I don't know. You got anything? Miles. I say Miles.
George Bello seems to be like the closest. He's getting in the box at least and getting some shots off. So I'll say George Bello.
I say Miles on like a corner out of nowhere. All right. Kirk Sherb Street asks, how much to loan Trey Young to the team? We need an elite playmaker pulling the strings. What position is Trey? Let's start with that.
Ooh, I mean, I think he's a creative. He's got to be a little 10, playmaker. Right? Yeah, he's absolutely a 10. Yeah. Dishing, totally scoring when he needs, for sure.
As far as a loan, I think like, I don't know, 500,000 TAM converted to like David Stern bucks or whatever they use.
Just keep on converting it enough times until it becomes obsolete. Yeah.
Adam Silvers, even, I don't know. Ryan Lee asked, who would win in a street fight between Lopez and Nuhu? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, Nuhu as a fighter is a fascinating concept to me. He's so like out of control. I don't know. I feel like he would either knock you out in 5 seconds or leave himself extremely open on like a really goofy ass like backspin punch.
Yeah, I think the obvious answer is kind of Nuhu because of just the size disparity, but also I don't know. There's something you don't want to mess with the guy with the shaved in dash in his eyebrow. There's something.
You keep bringing that up, and
I know.
It hasn't paid off yet.
It's my favorite Eric Lopez quality. I'm sorry.
Okay. Tony asked, how many yellow and red cards will Heinze get this season? I think he leads the team in yellow.
Yeah, is this just 2?
It's close. Yeah, he's either. I think he's tied with someone.
The next thing is the red card, like Tata got, where he punted the ball. Yeah. Did you see Heinze try to like take the ball over his back with his heel yesterday?
Oh,
when
no,
the ball was coming out of bounds. Yeah,
I did see him like put his arm around the ref at one point and just kind of laugh about his yellow card, which was fun. Man, I don't know. I'm hoping he gets to like, I think it's like 5 in the first half of the season. You get a suspension for the next game. I think that would rule.
Somebody was asking if yellow card accumulation applies to coaches, and I don't know. We'll have to find out.
We'll find out. That'd be amazing. Yeah, we'll find out from Pro. And that was rapid fire. Joe, you got a Braves hit. Let's get you out of here. Any final thoughts?
Nope, none at all. Just keep building to next week.
Go team. We'll see y'all Saturday for Nashville. That's a big one. We'll have a preview show up for that on the Patreon, everything like that. Nashville, very good. I don't feel good about this game. Shocker. Bye, y'all.